രേഷ്മ മിസ് അദ്ദേഹം കയറിയായിരുന്നു, അതിനിട്ട് ഇറങ്ങിയിട്ടുണ്ടല്ലോ, വീണ്ടും കണക്ഷൻ ആയിട്ടില്ല എന്ന് തോന്നുന്നു.
ഇല്ല, ജെന്നിഫർ സ്പേഴ്സ് അവിടെ ഉണ്ട്.
ഉണ്ടല്ലേ?
ആ ലേഡി പറ്റി വീഡിയോ ഓൺ ചെയ്ത് വെച്ചിട്ടുണ്ടല്ലോ മാഡം, ജെന്നിഫർ സ്പേഴ്സ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ട്. ഐ തിങ്ക്
she's there on the top. It's 7 o'clock now. Miss, shall we start now? രേഷ്മ മിസ്,
ഇത് നമ്മൾ അയച്ചു കൊടുത്തിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. ഞാനിപ്പോ ഒന്നും കൂടെ അയച്ചു കൊടുത്തിട്ടുണ്ട്. ഇപ്പൊ വന്ന് ജോയിൻ ആളിലേക്ക്. Hello, welcome Jennifer.
Hello.
Yeah. Right, one moment. Hi.
Miss, we can start now, ma'am.
Yeah, we can start.
Mohan sir.
Hello.
ഹരിത സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്തോളൂ. ഹരിത സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്യുന്നില്ലേ?
Hello.
ശരിയാണ്.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you. You can start now.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Good evening. A very warm welcome to one and all present here. Today we have joined together for the second webinar of the series Orenda 2020, conducted by the Social Work Association of the Students and the Department of Social Work, Sri Shankaracharya University of Sanskrit, Kaladi. According to Maria V. Snyder, trust is hard. Knowing who to trust is even harder. How often have you encountered a situation where you have questioned the truth you placed in others? Or have you trusted someone at their word only to find you have been cheated or lied to? How did that make you feel? Well, if you ever had such thoughts in your mind, then you are at the right place today. With a great honor, I would like to welcome Dr. Jennifer Spears, Research Associate and Tutor, Center for Research on Families and Relationship, University of Edinburgh, for today's session about the topic, how do I know that I can trust you? Next, let me welcome our moderator, Dr. K.K. Bogan, Assistant Professor, Department of Social Work, Sri Shankaracharya University of Sanskrit, Kaladi, and our HOD, Dr. Reshma Bharadwaj, and all other faculty members of the department and other people who have joined here to attend the webinar session. Welcome all, and let me hand over the session to the moderator. Sir, please. Bogan.
Thank you, Harida. I think I am audible too.
Yes, Bogan sir, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, Harida, and I am borrowing some of your words with your permission.
Thank you, sir.
The truth we placed on others. I believe there won't be any other apt words to define the word trust. And today, the mankind as a whole are in search of that truth all over the globe, I think. But unfortunately, it seems as lost. If someone is there who can assure the same, how many lives would have been saved? How many unwanted events would have been unhappened? Still, we are repeating the same tone word, trust. That is everything. We, the social workers, also are not foreign to this word trust. This is the base of the underlying principles of social work, which the social work profession is built upon. The importance of trust is well understood while we work with an individual, group, or community, whatever. No difference whether it is personal or professional. Mutual trust is the only thing that drives a relationship. Here is a wonderful person today with us, Dr. Jennifer Spears, who can efficiently speak upon the importance of trust in our relationship. Let me introduce Dr. Jennifer M. Spires. She is basically from Scotland, UK, and belongs to University of Edinburgh, and she is trained in medical social work. Presently, she is working as a research associate and tutor in the Center for Research on Family and Relationship. Her PhD is on a very interesting topic that discusses anonymous semen donation, significance of genetics to men, and the meanings of kinship between its secret connections. Her research interests of anthropological origin issues, especially in the areas of adoption, fostering, infertility, health-related social work, and lifelong issues for adults brought up apart from their birth families. Her long-standing experiences in social work adores ROGAR, UK, British Infertility Counselling Association, British Fertility Society, British Association of Social Work, and the Board of Children in Scotland, and many more. She is an ardent writer too. Some of her published works are on eddies of distress, performing secrecy of hidden identities in research, ethical and practical problems in keeping secrets in fieldwork at home. Today, she will be presenting on the topic, how do I know that I can trust you? Certainly, Mom. We all trust you with all our hearts and wish to hear from you. Kindly enlighten us from the genuine riches of your glorious wisdom. And I gladly welcome you to the platform of Orenda 2020 today. On behalf of all who are waiting for your loving words very impatiently. So thank you and welcome you, Ma'am, once again, and handing over to you.
Thank you very much, and good evening to you all from Edinburgh, the capital of Scotland. I feel very honoured that I've been asked to give you a short presentation, and I hope that you will find something useful in it, because trust, as you can deduce from the introductions, is a huge, huge subject. So I was told that this would be one of a series of talks on subjects that at times get taken for granted in social work. And so, given my research interests and my work experience, I thought that the topic of trust would be an appropriate one. What I intend to do is to share some observations about the concept of trust, and then some material from my research, and then conclude with some thoughts about where this might fit into social work practice. First of all, I begin with a story, because that's what social anthropologists do. If you know any of the history of social work in the UK, you may remember that until 1964, the social workers in hospitals were called almoners, an old name for people who gave food and money to the poor. My first job as a medical social worker was in a hospital in London, located in a very traditional working class community. One morning, I went to visit an elderly lady on a ward to check that she was happy with all the arrangements that had been made for her discharge home later that day. There was transport. Neighbours asked to warm the house and to buy food. A home help to come in every day. Meals on wheels at lunchtime. There had been a long list of things that I had had to do. The elderly lady replied that yes, thank you, she was very satisfied, but she had just one question for me. Did she not have to see the lady almoner before she was discharged? Well, I am quite small, and I looked very young then, but I replied gently that I was the lady almoner. The poor soul was so embarrassed, but I had to understand why she had thought as she had. She assured me that she had kept nothing from me. Everything was fine. It was not that she did not trust my arrangements. She just thought that she had to see an older woman with a title that was familiar to her, and a person who she and her generation knew and trusted to help. She didn't know about the change of professional title. The lesson that I took from this conversation, and which is still relevant for me, is that trust cannot be assumed. There I was, proudly wearing my Institute of Medical Social Workers badge, but that meant nothing to the elderly lady. And often afterwards, I would introduce myself to older patients by saying, I am the medical social worker for the ward. We used to be called almoners. That helped to place me as a trained professional worker. But the next step was for them to decide whether or not to trust me as an individual worker, to trust me with their worries, with shameful secrets, with their hopes and anger and successes, and at all times to respect their confidentiality. For trust cannot be forced. A decision whether or not to trust is made voluntarily. Trust has a number of definitions. The one that I am using in this presentation is by Melahy and Wood, quotes, an expression of confidence that one will not be harmed or put at risk by the actions of another party, unquote. So trust, therefore, can be a feeling, an emotional commitment, rather than a rational choice. It implies the predictability of future behavior and is not meant to involve emotional risk. On a theoretical level, the concept of trust can be used to explore and try to understand difficult relationships. And here I shall turn to some findings from my research. My ethnographic fieldwork involved meetings with many fertility specialists and interviews with doctors who had donated semen when they were young medical students. And that was 20 to 40 years beforehand. Their donations were anonymized by the clinics. The recipient women and their husbands were given no information about the donors, and they were told that they must not tell anyone about what they had done, and certainly must never tell the child. Anonymity and secrecy were thought to be essential at the time because, firstly, if the secret were to be revealed, the child might be stigmatized as being illegitimate. Secondly, unwanted childlessness was not always treated sympathetically, and the doctors wanted to spare married women from that. Thirdly, the doctors thought that the donor and the recipient woman might have adulterous thoughts about each other, and so the marriage would suffer. And fourthly, no one trusted the donor-conceived child to remain loyal to the mother's husband, that is to say, to the social father. There was a very strong cultural idea that you could have only one father. Yet, the doctors did trust that the recipient woman and her husband would keep the matter a secret from others and from the donor-conceived child. That was what the doctors told them to do, so of course they obeyed, didn't they? Well, no. And now any attempt at anonymity and secrecy has been blown right out of the water by public access to DNA testing. Furthermore, the complex impact of revealed secrets has included feelings of mistrust of doctors by some parents and mistrust of doctors and parents by many donor-conceived people. The donors who I interviewed told me that they had trusted the clinics to keep their identity a secret. This was easily achieved. The clinic records were destroyed. Yet many of the donors wondered how many offspring they had helped to create and how the offspring had turned out. Were they happy? Were they healthy? But this curiosity was overridden by lack of trust in the offspring. The donors were wary about what the motives of the offspring would be if they went searching. They might be unhappy and be looking for a new family, or they might turn up at the door and ask for money. Interestingly, all of the donors whom I interviewed were very well off financially. And so I think that we can suggest that the turning up at the door and asking for money is a metaphor for intrusion into family relationships. There are some other themes here, particularly the lack of knowledge amongst the doctors, including the doctors who were donors, about how relationships can change over the life course. In addition, they had almost no information about adoption practices and policies in the UK, and so they were unaware of research which shows that secrets in families are notoriously hard to keep, and that on the whole, adopted people do not seek to replace their adoptive parents with their birth parents. Beyond the mistrust and loss of trust between these various groups, the doctors, the donors, parents, and donor-conceived people, we need to add the state as a key player. Donor-assisted conception began in the UK in the late 1930s, but it took over 60 years to introduce state regulation of assisted human reproduction, and over 70 years to regulate against anonymity and allow donor-conceived people some rights of access to information about their genetic origins. One Member of Parliament noted in the House of Commons in 2008, during a debate on the matter of birth certificates, that, quote, "The state has a moral duty not to be party to a deliberate deception about a person's genetic history," unquote. A donor-conceived adult, a lawyer who was born in the 1950s, asserts that the state has been involved in deception because it has colluded with parents who have registered false information about parenthood on their children's birth certificates. He describes such birth certificates as, quote, "statutorily sanctioned fraud," unquote. So where were UK social workers in all of this? Could and should we have any role in helping to alleviate the levels of mistrust and to help to mend the damaged relationships? A problem that we had from the start was that for many in the social work profession, this area of human life seemed to be of very low priority. Counselling childless couples and supporting donor-conceived people and their parents was surely cushy work, easily done, no stress. A second problem was that any involvement would likely bring us into apparent conflict with doctors in the fertility industry, both private and NHS. And not all social workers were up for that and didn't feel that it was an appropriate thing to do. Undaunted, a group of us got together, and the group has been called PROGAR, which I think was mentioned in the introduction. Most of us had trained as medical social workers, and others came from childcare training. Over the years, we developed, implemented, and revised our strategies. One member founded the British Infertility Counselling Association, which introduced accreditation for counsellors who are now essential team members in infertility clinics in the UK. We reframed the issue of anonymity as being a matter of children's rights and as a matter of the need for healthy family relationships. And that helped to bring it within the understanding and scope of social work more widely. We developed the concept of a contact register and information exchange for people with a personal involvement in donor-assisted conception. And this was based on the Adoption Contact Register for Scotland, where I was the director at the time. We carried out research where possible, and we lobbied hard for legislative change. We were totally inexperienced in lobbying at first, and there were many setbacks. We didn't know who to trust. But finally, anonymity was abolished and the contact arrangements procedure came into being. In doing all of this, we deemed it essential to work collaboratively and to build up trust with parents, with donor-conceived people, counsellors, the regulatory body, and the British Fertility Society. In working at this policy level, we had the same values, I suggest, as we did when we went back to our day jobs and worked with individuals, couples, and families and communities. And secondly, we were often mindful of the fact that if something is a problem, some doctors tend to say, best not to do that, don't go there. Whereas we social workers say, it's a problem, so let's work out a way to make it not a problem anymore. Let's trust that we have the right values and skills and knowledge to come up with solutions rather than avoidance tactics. So I shall end it there, and I will be very pleased to have comments and questions, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ma'am. It was really a wonderful talk that reflects the long-standing experience, especially in your medical social work profession, that is related with the infertility clinics and other health-related issues. And this was rightly reflecting the ethics of care that we have to practice in infertility, and its anonymity we have to practice in the semen donation and all. And we are very happy to hear from the true words, especially from different culture like UK, where the social work is defined to be born like. Anyway, that trust as an ethics of care. So it's very wonderfully you have reflected your experiences. Now the platform is open for the participants. You can add your reflections and any clarifications if you need. Now you can raise. Participants, please.
പാർട്ടിസിപ്പൻസിന് വേണ്ടിയിട്ട് ഒരു കാര്യം പറയാണ്. നിങ്ങൾക്ക് വേണമെങ്കിൽ മലയാളത്തിലും ചോദ്യങ്ങൾ ചോദിക്കാം. ഞാൻ ഇംഗ്ലീഷിലേക്ക്, ഞങ്ങൾ ആരെങ്കിലും ഒരാൾ ഇംഗ്ലീഷിലേക്ക് ട്രാൻസ്ലേറ്റ് ചെയ്യാം. അപ്പം ഇംഗ്ലീഷിൽ ചോദിക്കാൻ ബുദ്ധിമുട്ടാണ് എന്ന് വിചാരിച്ചിട്ട് ആരും ചോദ്യങ്ങൾ ചോദിക്കാതിരിക്കരുത്. മലയാളത്തിൽ ചോദിച്ചാലും കുഴപ്പമില്ല. ആൻഡ് യു ക്യാൻ ഓൾസോ റൈറ്റ് ദർ ഇൻ ദ ചാറ്റ് ബോക്സ്. സോ വി ക്യാൻ ഓൾസോ റീഡ് ഔട്ട് ദ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻസ്. സോ പ്ലീസ് ഡോണ്ട് ഹെസിറ്റേറ്റ്. കം ഫോർവേഡ് ആൻഡ് ആസ്ക് ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻസ്. ഫയർ അവേ.
Thank you, ma'am. Hello, participants. You are all welcome to this platform now. It's your chance.
Hello.
Okay, Anrutan, you can proceed.
Good evening, ma'am. Myself, Anubhav. Thank you for your session. It was really wonderful, ma'am. Thank you. You cited many examples, and it was really informative for us. So, I guess I am audible, ma'am.
Yes, Anubhav, you are audible.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
audible.
So, ma'am, amidst the COVID-19 pandemic situation and all, the topic for the session is really relevant. How we can trust someone. So, my question is, the situation which we are facing today, where we see that there is a gap between people because we are confined to our homes and we are not able to mingle with the people out. So many relationship problems and situations, breakups, and divorce cases has been increasing in this situation. Ma'am, what is your take on what will be the mental situation for the same?
This is a big concern in the UK, and I think in a great number of countries. People are being confined together without the opportunities of discussing things with other people or going to another place for respite. For some people, being confined together has been a blessing. We have heard stories of parents and children saying it's been wonderful to be able to spend so much time together. But perhaps as social workers, we tend to hear less of those good stories, and the ones that our work brings us into contact with are the situations that you describe. I have not had a very close contact with the mental health services here in Scotland, but what I read is that it is very important for people to have access to digital ways of getting in touch with other people. For people without access to the internet, the telephone has become very important. I suspect it is different in India. I'm sure you all have mobile phones, but in the UK, many people still have landlines, and the telephone company made some discounts for landline users in order to encourage people to be in touch with friends and family and to reach out to each other. So, to get to your point, yes, I think it is a serious problem, made even more difficult by the fact that social workers may have to physically distance from the people that they're helping. So I think it's back to the thing that I suggested. Social workers are good at saying, okay, there's a problem. Let's not avoid it. How can we work together to find a way around this? How can we help people who are living in abusive or mentally distressing situations? And as far as I can see, in many cases, that will be a matter of expanding the resources that we use already, but it also may mean getting together with community groups to make sure that somebody knocks on the door and says, are you needing any food today? Is everything all right? How are you? Not being intrusive, but somehow showing that everybody in the community is a value. Is that helpful?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Anubhav. Hello, ma'am. Now, Vinod has put some text here. The question is like this: trust and belief. These are both same words or different in social work perspective. Could you please tell with some examples? Right, please, ma'am.
I think I need a bit
Hello, ma'am.
more information. Yeah. Yeah, can you
Yeah, the
explain?
question is trust and belief. Both. Yeah, yeah. Can you explain with example? Some example from your experience.
Example,
Vinod, can you please explain whether by belief you mean belief in religion? Or is that the kind of belief that you are mentioning, or is it something else? Or is it just believing in not just in spiritual or religious origin, but believing in something like maybe medical system, social work? Is that what you mean? Can you please explain, Vinod? I think then maybe Jennifer could answer your question
Ma'am,
more.
no, no, ma'am. For the trust, we are colloquially using belief, no, in Malayalam. That's why the confusion is coming up.
Vishwas.
Hello, Vinod.
Okay.
In social. Okay, okay. Okay, I myself will answer this question. Actually, trust and belief. That's a colloquial difference for this particular word trust only, Vinod. That's why we are confusing. Actually, trust and belief are same, and we are following the same in social work also. We need not be misunderstood. Ma'am, actually, it is a colloquial difference of the same word, ma'am. Trust.
trust, I think trust has got different meanings in different societies. And when I was working on my presentation, I used the definition that it is only one definition. There are other definitions. So trust, yes, we have trust in certainly in the Christian sense of trusting in the Lord, and you can trust that something will not go wrong, which maybe is to do with belief. But the definition that I used was one that seemed to fit with the idea that trust is a useful thing in relationships. But it is also possible to say, is trust necessary for a working relationship between a social worker and the person that they're helping? Are there other kinds of things that we could think of, like can you make an agreement or a contract? But even then, people might say, but how can you have an agreement unless you trust that the other person will keep their side of the agreement? So I think you raise a very interesting point there.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
I have a question.
Anyone else? Ma'am,
Yeah.
please.
Like in the beginning, when we were narrating that story about that old woman whom you met and you were the social workers, so you were mentioning how there were different registers by which people understand what trust is, or you use when you trust someone. So for the older lady, it was like she was expecting an almoner while you were a professional social worker. So I was thinking of trust in the context of India, where like we have very structured hierarchies and inequalities existing, and trust is not something that happens between individuals, whether between a social worker and client. I mean, even in the relationship between a social worker and client, all these structural inequalities and prejudices and stereotypes might come up, like caste or gender, or like all those things, regional differences. So in such a context, like, how is trust possible between different different layers of people?
I, I think in my experience, it is possible to have trust between people from different backgrounds, people who are at different places socioeconomically. I know there is one bit of research which is in the book Trusting and Its Tribulations that you know of, and that we should maybe let our listeners have details of. And one of the chapters in that book, as far as I remember, is about trust between household servants and their masters. And the researcher argued that even despite the differences, the structural differences, it was still possible to have trust. That may be controversial, maybe it doesn't, it seems counterintuitive, perhaps. I mean, it is not for me to tell you how it might work in your country, but I suspect that you are probably using trust without maybe even thinking that you are doing so, because some kind of trust has to exist in order to keep the wheels of a country turning. But it may be that in social work, trust, maybe it looks different between, say, your part of the world or mine, or in Aotearoa's New Zealand or Uganda or something like that. That would be an interesting debate.
Thank you, Jennifer. Boban sir, there is a question in the chat box.
Okay. Ma'am, yeah, I heard, ma'am. Ma'am, another question for you here. In your views, what are the advices you are wishing to give for present social workers as well as future social workers?
I'm sorry, what the address is? What do you mean by?
No, advice. Not address, advice.
Oh, advice. Oh.
Advice
well,
for the
social workers have to be careful about giving advice. Do we not? You know, giving advice can be a problem, because if we give advice to somebody, are we being patronizing? Are we saying to them, I know best what you should be doing? We have to give them information, because people often cannot make decisions without information. If it's about, you know, what should they do, which which official should they speak to, how should they go about something. But I think social workers always have to keep in mind that it is the person, the individual person, who may well be the best person to answer their own question. But they need information, they need support to explore all the options, and they may need advocacy. But I mean, one clear example is, which is very relevant in our country, what do we say to a woman who is being abused by her husband? Now, our instincts as human beings might be say, oh, you must leave him, you must leave him, you must leave him. But there may be so many reasons why she does not want to do that at that time. Our role then as social workers is to make sure that she has the space to explore what her options are, to think about the implications if she did leave him. Are there children? Where would she go? What about the money? What about perhaps the love that she still has for her abusive husband? So for me, that is a very clear example that we have to be wary, be careful about giving advice to people. And the same would be for a community. I mean, this is something that anthropologists are very aware of. You know, you must not go into a community and say, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that, it is best for you to do this, that, and so on. You have to take your time and work through with people how perhaps the anthropologist, like the social worker, is some kind of an expert, often because we have heard from other people how they have dealt with something. But we have to be very careful about giving advice. That's where I come from anyway.
Ma'am, can I ask you one question?
Merin, please.
Ma'am, my name
You
is
please,
Megan
Mary.
Thomas. Okay. I want to know that how can get people trust us quickly?
I wish I knew the answer to give you quickly. We need to think about the context. Some people are going to take a long time to trust us because they have had very bad experiences in the past, either with other social workers or just in life. Perhaps they've been badly treated as children. We have to think of the little things, which can become big things. If we say we are going to meet with somebody, then we must keep to that promise to meet them. We must try to turn up at the correct time. We must respect their confidentiality. We must assume that people may test us. They may test us, and maybe for a while, to see whether they can trust us or not. And they may even set us a test. I think social workers have to recognize that and have to talk that through with somebody. I think it is totally accepted that if we're working in some areas like the protection of children, the parents may not trust us at all because they think, oh, they're going to take our children away from us. So why should we trust them at all? So I think you have to work out strategies. what even ask these people, are you going to find it difficult to trust me? Do you feel it would be hard to work with me? What would help? And I think sometimes it can be surprising the answers that we get.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mary. Ma'am, here Dilip
Thank
Raj
you, sir.
is asking, isn't trust implied in the constitution of social itself? What is special about the trust in the institutional context that you are drawing on?
Oh, that is such an interesting question. I wonder, do you have ideas about this yourself? Do you have an example that has made you ask this question? I think it is very interesting because, yes, I've been talking about trust is necessary perhaps to keep the wheels of society turning. But yeah, we do know from our experience in social work, and anthropologists certainly know, that in many societies they function well as societies, but there may be a lot of distrust in families or between families. So I'm not sure that we can assume that maybe it's automatic. I would really be interested in hearing a further thought from you.
Actually, I was drawing on Isaiah Berlin's ideas regarding the definition of
Dilip Raj.
social. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So, if there is, when you are looking at the behavior of individuals and identify them as social, one has to trust the other. When I am doing something, the other should reciprocate. Otherwise, there would be no family, there would be no classrooms. So, the very constitution of social implies an invisible presence of trust. But you were speaking about a special kind of trust in a special institutional context of adoption and, definition of fatherhood, etc. So, is it the same, or is there a difference between these two kinds of trust? Yeah.
How's about we think of it in terms of trust that is implicit in relationships and trust that has to be earned. So, for example, between children and their parents, we assume that there is going to be trust. A baby, without thinking about it, trusts that it's going to be fed. A child trusts that its guardians, its parents will look after it. But in situations and in relationships that perhaps are outside of that institution, when the expectations might be different, then I think we can ask whether trust has to be earned, what that trust can look like. Is it conditional? So that some people might say, okay, I will give you information about my financial circumstances, but I'm not going to tell you that I'm having an affair with somebody, that I'm committing adultery. Or, a young person might say, well, I'm going to trust you with, how I feel about my parents, but I'm not going to trust you with the information that I'm on drugs.
Dilip sir? Dilip sir, anything to add? Hello? So then we can move into the next question now. In these times of modern technology, dealing with information, especially personal information on public domains, have become a problem. Many organizations have been in controversies regarding privacy violations. Ma'am, do you think people would be more concerned about their sensitive information being used against their will, even in a therapeutic setting? Another Varghese asking.
So do I think people would be more concerned about their sensitive information used against their will? I think that a lot of people are concerned. I don't know how it is in India or in your state, but we now have quite strict laws in the UK about what information can be recorded and by whom. But even so, many people believe that we live in a surveillance society, and it is difficult sometimes to keep a border between what we know about ourselves and our intimate friends and family and what the state or professionals know about us. It is a matter of concern, big concern. At a very fundamental level, what kind of records do we keep? The notes that people make, either on paper or on their mobile phone or other device, after they have had contact with people. Of course, this has to be open discussion between the social workers and the people they're helping. What kind of information are we going to record? Who is actually going to write that information? So at the end of a meeting, maybe the individual and the social worker together write a record of the meeting so that the person being helped has a co-ownership of it. But it's a very good question because I think I can't think of any particular examples, but I am almost certain that the development of digital technology has had an impact on the relationships between helpers and the people who are helped, not just in social work, but also particularly in medicine. Who has access to information? Who knows what about whom? So, in a sense, it affects us too as individual citizens. So, we, have a duty to think through what is the information that I'm gathering? How is it going to be recorded? Who owns it and for how long? Those of you who are doing research will know that, of course, there are often very strict regulations about how long information from our research informants can be kept. And that sometimes boils down to how much trust do we have in digital systems? How much do we trust the people who manage it? Do we trust the state? In the United Kingdom, we have had some terrible scandals about private information not being found. It has been found to be insecure. That is shocking. That, for us, is a breach of trust between the state and the citizen. So, good question.
Thank you, ma'am. Dilip sir is again asking, can you please clarify what exactly changed regarding definitions of anonymity through your intervention? What was the impact of new definition on donors, children, and parents?
Yes. The situation for so many years was that a donor conceived person had no right to ask for information about their donor. So it was like a wall between the donor and the donor conceived person. And that was just so different to what happens for other people, particularly in adoption. And the group that I mentioned, PROGAR, several of us had extensive experience in the field of adoption and helping families many years after the adoption, helping adopted people to find out information about their birth parents, or even in Scotland, helping birth family members to find information about the adopted person. So I think it's true to say that we were driven professionally by the need to change that situation. The reason that it took so long was because, as I indicated, the state did nothing about it. The doctors a number of them were concerned that if we made information available, then the number of donors would decrease. And I'm happy to put it on this record, because I know it's being recorded, that after the law was changed so that people could get information, there was no decrease in the number of donors coming forward. What happened was that a different kind of donor began to come forward. Older men with families already, men who actually saw their donation as a gift to help a childless individual. Whereas in the past, amongst the men with whom I did my research, most of them were paid. They were medical students and they needed the money. So the substance of the semen has taken on a different quality. It has become like a gift rather than as a fertilization, a commercial material. So the social workers in the group that I was in, we just tried to be as noisy as possible, but in a professional way. We wrote letters, we lobbied, we got onto the radio, we spoke to anyone and everyone, but also, crucially, and this is why I did my research, we tried to find out what the obstacles were. What was the problem? Why were we continuing with anonymity? We saw that there was going to be an issue with DNA testing. Maybe other people did, but nobody talked about it, but we did in social work. We said, you are not going to be able to keep this secret forever, because the power will move to the donor-conceived people, and they will start doing DNA testing and finding their half-brothers and sisters, and then maybe their donor. So, already the cat was out of the bag, as we say. So we saw that anonymity was an ideology that could not last. But as social workers, we felt that our responsibility was to try to get round any problems that the lifting of anonymity would cause. So that was why we pushed for this idea of a procedure for exchanging information where the parties don't need to meet, and that would be backed up by counselling and support from social workers. Does that answer the question?
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Another question from Preeti Satish on YouTube Live. Could you please distinguish between faith and trust?
Oh, I'm not a theologian. I remember the minister of the church that I go to in Edinburgh saying, the opposite of faith is certainty. So, faith, you have faith in somebody, I think that is, yes, that can be that can be sort of trust in somebody. I'm sure that there are differences, but I'm not sure that I'm the best qualified to give you a deeper answer. But it's a really interesting question. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Here Parvati is asking, why do you choose this topic for today's webinar? Like, why you thought that trust is relevant in this present situation?
I asked your colleague, why did you ask me to speak? I think it was because I was known to Reshma because of this book on trust, which arose out of a wonderful weekend workshop in Norway a number of years ago. And I trust is a very interesting subject. So I phoned some other social workers in Edinburgh and said, I can't tell colleagues in India what they should be doing. So what shall I talk about? And they said, well, what do your colleagues in India know about you? So I told them. And so they said, well, how's about trust? And I thought, yeah, that's an interesting topic. And maybe it's one that you can discuss in the weeks ahead at the end of this.
Yeah. Yeah, ma'am. Actually, this is a question from my budding social worker. For the like this kind of budding social workers and the workers of future generation, Dr. Reshma Bharadwaj is proposing a text for you. Trusting and its tribulations, interdisciplinary engagements with intimacy, sociality, and trust. That was edited by Vedis Bordu and Mark Steins. You can go for that text and you can go into the subject. Then you can understand what is the need of or relevant of trust, especially in current social work. Thank you for the question, Parvati.
I think that
any other
book
question?
I think it is available as an ebook.
Yeah. Thank you. Anubhav is here to ask you related to academics and social work. Anubhav, you can unmute and speak here.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, basically, I am a third year English literature student. It's my last year undergraduation. So one option which I would keep is for pursuing social work, and I would like to know what are the scope of social work in the future, and what are the perspective as a literature student I have to pursue for taking up a career in social work. Ma'am, I hope I'm clear.
Is this India?
Worldwide, ma'am. Worldwide.
Oh, worldwide. I do not see any decrease in the need for social work. Different countries do have different standards for accreditation, perhaps. So, and of course now there are problems with travel, both because of COVID, but also because, you know, so many countries, particularly the populist ones, are making their borders less open. So in the past, social workers from overseas would be very welcome to work here in the UK, but you know, things have changed at Westminster. But maybe in Scotland in the future, maybe you can come and work for us here.
Ma'am, regarding the social working prospect in UK, is there any way we could know more about that in England?
I think the registration systems in the UK differ between the four nations: Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales, England. I think what you need to do is to go online and look for what do they call it in England? Do you know, I can't even remember whether it's called. But I think if you Googled something like registration of social work in England, then I think something would come up. You can also, I think, look at the website for the British Association of Social Workers. In terms of jobs, they are advertised a lot online nowadays. I mean, the problem we have at the moment is that our UK government has control over immigration throughout the whole of the UK. In Scotland, we wanted to have our own system because we said we want people to come and live here. But the system says that you cannot come and work in the UK unless you have or will be earning a certain level of income. So that can be difficult for people to get here. Obviously, if you were thinking of working here, you must have good English. That, you know, goes without saying, really. So I'm afraid, and you know, because of Brexit, things are just going to get very, very difficult, or more difficult, really.
Thank you, ma'am. And the answer for Malavika is that the records of this particular event will be available on demand with the organizers. They will provide it. Thank you, Malavika. Any other questions? The participants can unmute and talk directly. Now, another question from Gauri Priya, ma'am. How much can we trust someone over the phone?
Can you, is this, if somebody telephones you and asks for information, or somebody who is wanting a counseling session over the phone?
Ma'am, hello.
Hello?
It's about the counseling session.
I think there is information on the website of the British Infertility Counselling Association about telephone counselling. I know certainly that one of my social work colleagues, who is an accredited infertility counsellor, has been doing an enormous amount of telephone counselling during these times of COVID. And I think that the British Association of Counselling and Psychotherapy, I think it is called, I think they also have guidelines about telephone counselling. So I believe that there is good information online that you should be able to find. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Gauri, it's okay, I think.
Yes, sir.
Okay, there is an information from the organization. The feedback link is uploaded with the chat box. And the participants please fill the form, and the certificate will be received within 1 day. And we are moving to the next question. Another work is again here. Ma'am, do you think there are more people now approaching therapists with problems because of their trust issue?
I don't know. I don't know whether we can generalize. I wonder whether more people might be approaching counsellors because they trust that they will get some help from doing so. So that means that the counsellors have been have come to be seen as professional and trustworthy people. I think that in the field of infertility counselling, yes, there are more and more people going to making contact with the counsellors. Another thing is that some people find it easier to trust a stranger, a professional stranger, if you like, a counsellor or a social worker. They find it easier to trust them than they do their own family in discussing difficult problems. Because I think we all know that our family, our nearest and dearest, often like to give advice or tell us what to do. I'm quite happy to share with you that I have a lifetime of experience of that, because I was the little sister following two lovely older brothers who were always telling me what I should do. They never listened to my advice to them. And no matter how much I scolded them, no, they would not listen to my advice. It was perhaps somebody else that they would go to outside of the family. So I think there are things going on there. I think social workers are aware that in close-knit communities, it can be difficult for an individual to find a safe place to go to discuss a problem.
Okay, ma'am. Here is a different question from Merlin Johnson. She's asking about the job or opportunities of social work in UK.
Well, as I indicated in my previous reply to another of your colleagues, it's difficult because of the immigration policies of the UK. As far as I'm aware, there are lots of vacancies for social work, even though the local government departments are finding things very difficult financially. One of the problems that has been happening is that social workers, I think particularly in England, have been employed by an employment agency, and they then go to work for a local government social work department, on a contract. And this is not good because they maybe are on short-term contracts. It's difficult to build up team relationships. Very difficult for the people that we're trying to help to have such a constant turnover of social workers, I'm sorry. Because the poor souls, they have to start afresh with every new social worker. So I think if you want to know the situation, again, you can look online, see what the immigration situation is, or if you have relatives here already, would that be a possibility for you to come here? I think a lot of the vacancies tend to be in childcare. It has become so stressful that many social workers say they cannot work on it for a long period of time, because they get blamed if they do one thing, or they get blamed if they don't do it. And over the years, there has been inconsistent support from national politicians for the work of social workers in childcare. So it's not a panacea to come and work here. And it rains a lot in England.
Okay, ma'am. Even though it is difficult, Merlin is asking, is there any exam for social work aspirants from India to work in UK?
I'm sure there are, but I think if you go onto the website of the British Association of Social Workers, I know there has been a kind of group for black social workers, but I don't know whether in that context that really means Afro-Caribbean. I don't know whether that has included people from Asia. So I'm not the best person to ask, but I think if you go online, again, see what's available, British Association of Social Workers, look at the Guardian newspaper, they advertise social work jobs.
There is a kitten mewing
Okay.
away somewhere.
Yashma miss.
Is it a cat?
It's just saying, yeah, that's a cat.
Yashma miss.
It is wanting attention.
No. Yeah, it's wanting the attention.
Yeah, it is from here. Wow.
Oh, that's fine. Not this human when others are listening to us.
Well, maybe it is what we call a therapet.
Yeah.
Cats
Yeah.
and dogs
They
and
are also
horses
trusting us, ma'am.
used to help people.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think we can conclude now, ma'am. Now,
Yeah, I think there are no more questions.
answer to the particular question from Malavika. The link is provided for YouTube channel, and you can access the channel directly with using that link. Yeah. I think there is no more questions now. So this is the time to wind up now, and this time with you, ma'am, it was very interesting and very live also. Anything, I think we can have another session also regarding on trust and its relevance in social work profession and all later. But for the time being, we are very limited with the time, and now I am transferring this session to the organizers now. And thank you with the nice time with you, ma'am. Over to
Thank
the
you, ma'am.
organizers, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. And now I would like Arya to give the vote of thanks.
Harita, please take over the session.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Now I welcome Arya to give the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Harita. Am I audible?
Yes, Arya, you are.
Good evening to all.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I deem it an honor and privilege to host the vote of thanks on this
Yeah,
occasion.
audible, yeah. Proceed.
First and foremost, I thank our special guest, Dr. Jennifer Spears, research associate tutor, Center for Research on Families and Relationships, University of Edinburgh, who despite her busy schedule has found time to grace this occasion. A big thank you to Dr. Jennifer Spears for her efforts towards this session on how do I know that I can trust you. We are all inspired by your words, ma'am. I also express my heartfelt thanks to Dr. K.K. Boban for his valuable contribution. Thank you for the very professional you set as a moderator. I would like to take this opportunity to place our hearty thanks to Dr. Reshma Bharadwaj, head of the department, for her support and guidance she has extended to all of us. I owe a special gratitude to our faculty members who have worked hard to ensure that this occasion becomes a success. An event like this cannot happen overnight. The wheels started rolling weeks ago. We have been fortunate enough to be backed by a dedicated team, SWAS, under which the webinars are being conducted. Lastly, on behalf of Sri Shankaracharya University of Sanskrit, SWAS, and the Department of Social Work, I thank you all for your cooperation in making this webinar a resounding success. Once again, thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Thank you all.
Okay, then bye. Have a
Thank you,
good
Jennifer.
evening. I have.